What that means is that he will be doing our election of the chair for the Nelson Salmo EFG Regional Parks Commission. So Joe Carrico, I'm the General Manager of Community Services, and I will begin with the election of the chair. And as per our ECP process, I will call for nominations 3 times. If there is an election, we will do it by secret ballot. So calling for nomination the first time, Director Long.
I nominate Director Page.
Great, Director Page, do you accept?
I accept.
Calling for nominations a second time. Calling for nominations a third time. And it's my pleasure to turn the chair over to Director Page.
Okay, great. We'll just shuffle around here for 5 seconds, make it seem official. And I'll take us on to the traditional land acknowledgement, and that we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional territories we are meeting today. I have an agenda that has been circulated to you all in front of you. Are there any omissions, reorders, or changes? Hearing none, can I see adoption of the agenda? Cunningham and Lockwood. Any objections? Seeing none, that's adopted. We have minutes before us. Are there any concerns, amendments, or changes that need to happen here? Can I have someone move receipt of the minutes? Lockwood. Those are received. We have a delegation with us today, so let's begin with we have Chris Jury and, well, we have, no delegate, but a delegate.
I move freedom of the floor.
Freedom of the floor, please. Thank you.
As long as we can call him CJ1, CJ2.
This is a fun commission, as you can tell, because I'm in charge of it. Can I have a seconder for freedom of the floor? Seeing Cunningham, are there any objections? Freedom of the floor for our 2 guests here from the city of Nelson. And that takes us on to our first piece of business at 8.1. Chris Jury and Chris Chief Financial Officer with the City of Nelson, and Chris Johnson, General Manager of Community Planning, Climate, and Infrastructure with the City of Nelson, will provide a verbal update on the City of Nelson parks, for which we make partial contributions to.
And if we could just give me 1 moment, Chris, and I'll bring up the presentation.
I guess more than verbal.
You know, look kind of strange on the screen.
So, through the chair, while Joe is doing that, maybe I'll just start with a bit of a preamble and then we'll get into the slides. There's only 6 of them. So 7 of them, sorry. Merciful. Anyways, we want to take this opportunity to come and chat to the commission. It's, as you know, my tenure with the city is relatively short at this time. But with this arrangement through S202, it appears that in 2019 there was an agreement that was signed between the groups to have contribution agreements to a number of different parks, one of which being the Lakeside playing fields and a portion of Lakeside Park in Nelson. That contribution agreement was signed in 2019. That's carried on since. Chris Jury will speak to the financial parts in the latter part of the presentation, along with our proposal. And just at the outset, I just wanted to take the opportunity to set a bit of context for what the city has been doing with their parks during this time, or the playing fields and Lakeside. So just kicking off with the first slide there. So our staff take, we very much view Lakeside playing fields and the Lakeside Park as one of the gems in our town. I think that if you speak to anybody who plays there regularly or spends time there regularly or comes out of town to either play a sport or recreate on the playing fields or in the park, you hear a pretty common refrain that, like, wow, this is a really stunning place. So it's approximately 35 acres of park and playing fields is the whole area that we look after, and that's inclusive of the waterfront pathway. That, as many of you will know from being here, even seeing the dog walk, which is connected to that waterfront pathway, is a very well used mode of recreation and transportation for some. So yeah, our team is very much committed to operational efficiency and effectively managing this park. And I think that, you know, as Jerry gets into the financial parts, you'll see how well the city has done to contain those costs over the years when you see some of the expansion in the other areas and the expansion that we know we've all seen in rates across the board. So it's very much a focus of ours, and ensure that it stays the gem that it is, and also that we are efficient with the efforts that we put into it. So just some of the year-to-year efforts that we look at. So just the overall context, about 7,000 to 8,000 human hours go into maintaining those facilities per year. So this is a very, you know, significant amount of effort from our staff. If you think that a 40-hour per day or per week person works 2,080 hours a year, so that's about 4 FTEs there, about, you know, somewhere, and it fluctuates year to year depending on what else we have. But to give you an idea, the things that are regularly done, you know, mowing, fertilizing, aerating, weeding, tree pruning, planting, you know, these are all major efforts that occur at different times during the year. Spring is very much our heavy month, because not only are you trying to get all the plants into the ground and do all of that, but you're also, as you well know, when we get all of that water and all of that heat and sun, then we know that the mowing happens regularly. You can almost watch the grass grow, right? So there's also a lot of maintenance that occurs down there, and repairing and replacing of the irrigation system. So to keep that beautiful and green, we have a large irrigation system there, which is not your formalized water distribution system that is deeper and made out of more substantive materials. You know, it is well built, but, you know, this park has been around for a long time. The playing field, some of them have been around for a very long time. Some of them are relatively new, depends how long you've been around Nelson. But nevertheless, things happen that require ongoing maintenance there. The daily cleanup, again, you know, we talk about the amount of use that these parks get, and here's the surprising thing is, you know, go down there this evening. You'd have to walk around, because of course we have a large storm pipe issue that has created a giant hole on the way there that coaxes the playing fields. But the amount of use that waterfront pathway gets by people in the evenings, even in the winter. So the ongoing maintenance to make sure that it stays tidy and neat, and we clean out the garbages. And you'll know that there's some challenges in Nelson with other, you know, some of the vulnerable population leaving stuff around. So that becomes a larger and larger job too, with just generally maintaining the area to make sure that it doesn't become overrun with trash and it looks neat and tidy. In the summer, it's something that is, you know, sort of relatively new in the last 10 or 15 years, is the raking of the beach to ensure that that beach is nice and consistent and safe for everybody. So that happens weekly or more in the summer. The maintenance of the playground area, speaking from someone who has a 6 and 8 year old, for the first sort of 5 years of each of their lives, we spent a whole lot of time at that playground because it's just a lovely place to be in the summer. Cafe's right there. It's easy when it's hot out. You go from school down the lakeside, they can get wet and they can play in there, and you can get some chicken strips and fries, because that's all they eat anyway. So, and then finally, general maintenance of the pathways, the lights, the art, the benches, the rails, the sculptures, you know, all of that takes effort. Unfortunately, whether it's, you know, kids on their e-bikes that are shredding up the lawn, or the playing courts, or things like that, or it's people just generally being you know, destructive and kicking down portions of, you know, bike racks or sculptures, things like that. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into that as well, that can really throw us off. So that's just your general day-to-day, year-to-year efforts that are invested in that park. Again, 7,000 to 8,000 people hours go into that per year. And just looking at some recent improvements that have happened. So, you know, looking at increasing recreation opportunities, as we all know from the fantastic job that...
Am I still on the same slide?
Oh yeah, you can skip that, sorry, yeah. As you all know, recreation represents a number of different things. It's not just sports. The ones that I've listed here are fairly sporting. You know, the bocce courts and the basketball courts were 2 new initiatives. They were community-led, but definitely required quite a bit of support from the city to complete. An investment in time and funds to complete those. The basketball courts are fantastic. The bocce courts are beautiful. There'll be some additional work going on around there with some fencing this year. And as well, a new thing, there's a real demand for a cricketing pitch that is going to be installed this year closer to the tram house where some of the newer residents in Nelson, obviously that's one of the biggest sports in the world, they are keen to have a pitch that they can actually play cricket at now and not interfere, so that's happening this year. Over the last couple of years, accessibility, wanting to make this asset accessible to everybody, there's been significant investments, most notably with the paved waterfront pathway probably before, you'll remember it was that gravel approach. We just completed the lakeside multi-use pathway in front of the Kulos development there beside the Prestige to try and link that together, that we had an opportunity there. And, in discussions with what type of surface we should be putting down there, we asked what is the best surface to put down for accessibility, and it is that asphalt that we've done all the way along the playing fields now that runs into the concrete of the park. And now it just runs right up to where it hits the mall property, which is gravel along there, and then it hits our multi-use pathway, which is asphalt again, Prestige, and then we'll continue looking at how we extend that. But having that allows people that are rolling to roll with ease. It also allows multimodal, so if you want to go, your kids want to take their scooters or rollerblades, it just gets people out a little bit more, makes it more accessible. A big upgrade this past summer was the MobiMat water access, and that was done again through one of our community groups. They really spearheaded that, but that required a lot of work, a lot of cement work and engineering from our group to put that accessibility mat down across Lakeside. You can imagine somebody who has limited mobility, has a difficult time walking in the uncertain footing of sand. Again, we do the raking to try and make sure that that's as consistent as possible. But the MobiMat now allows a surface such that people can be transported down more easily and get into the water. Who doesn't like to get into the water on a hot summer day? So that was a big improvement. And then as well, the Tram Society, this is a bit of a unique one. Obviously, it's not necessarily accessibility, but it's required over $1 million in investment in the last year to have that tram run through there. As much as it's not necessarily part of that critical accessibility piece, I think that we can all agree that the tram is one of those sort of fundamental cornerstones of Nelson's waterfront to have that there. So that was a grant that the city ran through, and of course, grants take resources to secure and sort of run through the organization. So that was another big upgrade that happened in the last couple of years. From a facilities perspective, there's this going on this year and next year. We'll be looking at refurbishing some of the facilities there, starting with the bathhouse. The bathhouse is where the paddle shack is in the Lakeside Park proper, where the NBCC rents out that section. So anybody who's been to that facility recently knows that it's not the best. It's getting on in age and showing it. So we'll be just investing a little bit of money there to ensure that that's ready for another number of years of usable service. Well, the Tyler Lake Fieldhouse is getting a lot of love this winter. It gets pretty beat up down there from any number of people, but it's one of those public assets that does provide washrooms. It is heated, so it sees a lot of sort of extra abuse as a result. But it's a key part of our our field area. And then also just one other piece, all of this takes equipment to complete and to do efficiently and effectively. And in the last couple of years, we also built a shelter for that equipment in the nursery area between the rowing club and the tennis courts there. So that's just to give you a bit of an idea of our year to year, and then what we are looking at for projects that we've completed in the last couple of years and a couple that we have on deck.
Great, thanks, Chris. So yeah, I just wanted to give you a bit of a snapshot of who are those big user groups that we see down at the playing fields. Now these are just the folks that book the large spaces down there. This doesn't account for the countless number of families and kids that go down there and just play on the weekends and in the evenings. But as you can see in 2024, vast majority is that softball and soccer groups down there. I know the youth soccer clubs on Saturdays. I mean, they have over 1,000 kids down there playing soccer from all over the region. I used to coach soccer, and there's nothing better than being down there on a Saturday morning and having taken my kids to parks in the Okanagan and East Kootenays and all over for soccer tournaments. The fields that we have down in Nelson are some of the best that you'll see anywhere. Smaller groups as well, and Chris was mentioning some of those newer groups, more interested in other sports like the ultimate frisbee is something that came on in the last number of years, but as well as cricket is something that folks are showing an interest in. So quite a diverse range of sort of new sports as well that are becoming popular.
Or old sports that are coming back, like cricket.
Yeah.
How long ago was it when we last had one? 1890, 1895, something like that?
When I was in elementary school, I played cricket for a couple of years. Someone came by and tried to get a club started, and so a bunch of us joined in and
I
played.
think Landon's got some old photos from the Nelson Cricket League.
Yeah, it's fun. Okay, so just flip to the next slide here, and hopefully you can see this. A lot of numbers, but I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of, since the agreements come in place in 2019, what have we seen for operating costs, revenue over that period for Lakeside and playing fields. So 2019, we had just shy of $37,000 in field rental revenue. And again, those are just from those big groups, softballs, the soccer, those kinds of things. We had operating costs of $441,000. So the net cost was around $405,000 for those parks. And then we had the regional parks funding from S202 in here. They covered $350,000 of that. No surprise that 2020 we saw a bit of a drop in those field rental revenues, and we shifted as well to sort of a lighter maintenance schedule on the fields in that year. So we brought operating costs down in 2020. So a little bit of a reduction in cost, but steadily after that, 2021, 22, 23, kind of been getting back up to where we have that regular activity down there again. 2024 was a bit of an increase. We actually had the park open longer in 2024, and you can blame it on all kinds of external factors, on climate, on just seasonality, but we were open a couple of weeks earlier and stayed open a couple of weeks later. So we almost had a full month of additional park activity down there as far as maintaining them, continuing to cut the grass and having folks down there being able to use those fields. All in all, on average, we've been increasing since 2019 at around 4% a year in operating costs. Again, there was a drop off in 2020 and a bigger increase in 2024, but I think we've managed to keep costs pretty consistent. We've got, our QB staff in negotiated wage increases that are a bit higher than we've seen in the past, as a sort of that catch up for those high inflationary years. But overall, we've managed to keep costs fairly in check. But that regional parks funding has stayed flat over the years, so that gap, slowly been increasing. That is being funded, not through the regional park system, but through City of Nelson taxation.
Can I ask a question before we move that?
You guys good with questions now?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. Can you go back to that last slide? No, sorry. At the top, I saw Lakeside / something.
The field rentals, John?
The last
Just the Lakeside / playing field.
playing field.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So my question is the playing fields are you have to rent them to use them. Is that correct?
No, you could just go and show up and play. I mean, a lot of the larger groups, like the softball, they want to have that dedicated space so that if someone's there using it, they're able to say that it's, booked and they have, usage of it at a set time. But if you want to go down there and just, play some pickup softball, go ahead and
We don't police it. So if there's nobody else using it, go ahead and use it. But if you want to play from 6 to 7 on a Saturday evening, you got to book it. And if
Which
you-
costs?
Which costs, yeah,
Okay.
that's where the revenue
That's-
comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Could I?
Go ahead.
I didn't bring my book. So I have to ask Joe.
You want an RDCK tax book?
Well, no, I don't. At this point, it's more a memory question, if I could. So when we dedicated the 350, yeah. Director Bowes talked about it for a number of years, and we finally implemented that. In lieu of taking it over as a regional park, we deemed it a regional park so that we could provide some support to the city for that. Thanks. Prior to that, we partnered with the playing fields. So the playing fields were funded through parks.
Yeah, through.
So I'm just trying to get the whole historical.
Yeah, so through the chair, the Nelson and District Community Facility Service, which is S226, used to provide a grant to the city of Nelson for lakeside playing fields and for a Queen Elizabeth Park. When we shifted this and said this is even more regional in nature, the playing field portion that's not in S226, that's all in S202 now. What's remaining in S226, the other service, Nelson Leisure and Facility Service, that is still funding $37,000 a year for Queen Elizabeth Park. So the remainder, the 350 that's here specifically is about the walkway, the playing fields, and a portion of the operation of Lakeside Park.
To be clear, we rolled out of S226, the community complex, that portion that we funded for the playing fields, and rolled it into parks, and then added significantly to that contribution.
Correct.
In 19 or 18, one of those.
Yeah, and Chris has got
And
that.
that's
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Thanks. So we still have the 37 outside of this.
In S226.
Yes. Thanks.
And we, through the chair, did not prepare any costs associated with Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, that's not part of this
Yeah,
budget.
no, fair enough. I just wanted to just retrace the whole historical jump that happened in 18 or 19.
Yeah.
Dramatic increase.
That's good context.
Thanks.
One thing, but maybe actually, if you go back to that one thing that I should sort of, sorry.
You have the right place.
Or,
It doesn't work.
or we don't need to look at it, I can just speak to it, there's nothing really on there. I would just want to say what's not on the slide, so maybe it's not important to look at it. What's not included in those costs is some of the stuff that Chris Johnson was speaking to as far as those big capital projects that were done down there. These are just the operating costs. So what's not in there, and I just sort of grabbed a bit of a snapshot, although I think Chris hit most of them there, was that in 2021 we did the paving around Lakeside Park down there. That was a $150,000 project. In 2023 and 2024, of course, we did the hoops and bocce courts down there. There was some contributions from Columbia Basin Trust on that project. We're going to continue that into 2025, and part of the budget proposal is to do some fencing there as well. But when that's all complete, then that'll be a $220,000 project for the courts and the fencing. We've done bear bins in all of our parks, but a significant number of them were down at Lakeside and the playing fields. As Chris mentioned, part of the operating budget requests for 2025 and ongoing are a regular $50,000 a year contribution to upgrading our washrooms in our parks, and the first place we could look at is down at Lakeside and the bathhouses there. So yeah, quite a bit has been done and is planned to be done in the next number of years here, but that's not included in those numbers I showed you on the previous slide. Now we can look at this one.
Sorry.
No, it's perfect. That's great. Good flow.
No, good.
Just wanted to show you graphically sort of that net increase in cost, that 4% average annual increase in costs, and take a bit of a breakdown of 2024. So the total cost of operating Lakeside and the playing field was that very bottom line, $495,000. So how that was funded, City of Nelson's contribution, I guess, through S202, that 52% was $181,000. The remaining amount, that they paid through regular taxation was $145,000, and then the other S202 participants paid that remaining $169,000 to fund the overall operating costs for Lakeside and Brownfield. Hopefully that kind of makes a bit of sense, but
No, it makes no sense.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that too, the way through. Give
I
it
should have
to
read it top down. We can hit it again. Let's have something.
So, yeah, through the chair, I think what we're just highlighting here are the overall costs that the city of Nelson pays, both for the overages above that $350,000, as well as the city of Nelson portion via S202 of 52%. So of that $350,000, the city of Nelson pays 180 of it, or 181,000.
okay.
Right?
That's
So then it's 181 plus the residual, which is the overages above 350, that's 145. So in total, the city of Nelson pays $326,000, and the rest of the participants in S202 pay $169,000.
Just a reminder that we carried the majority of the budget. Got it. Lockwood.
Thank you. But I just want to break it down a little bit further. If we put it to person, everybody pays the same per person,
Through the chair.
right?
based
Because
on
we
assessed
have
value.
11,000 people in Nelson.
Yeah.
Compared to Salmo, we have 1,100 people. So 10 times greater.
Through the chair, I believe that the service establishment bylaw is based on assessed value.
Yeah.
So that's a bigger thing. But if you actually look at the population totals of EFG and Salmo, it totals around high 9,000s or 10,000. So you're kind of right, there. So
I just know
Gear down
the debate that
property value
we've gone
differences.
through
yeah,
over this multiple times
Yeah.
is do we, there's houses that are a lot more expensive in area F
mhm.
that
Yeah.
pay in a big portion, and so do we look at it, because we have spent so much time getting to this part, and Salmo was part of it, we get that measly $4,000, but it's what it is, and that's what we decided on, that it was, how does assessments do this? Salmo, when we started this, you could buy a house for 150,000. Now you're paying 500,000 for that same house. So, yeah, I just want to, because we have spent a lot of time on figuring out how to make all of this regional and why we got to this. So, thank you. Continue.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of, like a lot of the services we do, it's based on assessed values, and there's even within a municipality, there's, someone who lives in a more expensive home paying more in property tax than someone who lives a few streets down in a smaller home. It's just the model that seems to work for local governments, and there's pros and cons, but I think, it's probably one of the better tools that we have, for the most part, one of the only tools we have for allocating costs.
Everyone's just highlighting all the different ways that those costs move around and get divvied up on a per thousand basis.
Yeah.
And the impact that is every year, because it's budgets, and that's what we talk about.
That's right.
How does this impact?
Yes.
What's the vibe of the price?
Okay, so good. Thank you for breaking that down. On to the next slide. Just wanted to take a look then at the service as a whole and, you know, how the budgets have been for the S202. What I did though is pull out some of the grant funded pieces there. So you're just more looking at operating and not capital. So since 2019, so in 2019, you know, the budget for S202, again, net of those sort of capital grants was 193,000.
800.
Oh, sorry, 893,000. Salmo, I pulled out sort of that grant line to Nelson Salmo Parks of 386. So that was 43% of the total budget. And then 57,000 was that remainder, we'll call it rural parks here. How that's changed, again, just, you know, with keeping that funding flat since 2019, by the time you get to 2024, that line item is now 29% of the total budget, and 71% is made up of those other operating costs for other parks. So, you know, again, just wanting to highlight, you know, I think on the Nelson Park side, you know, we have seen some cost increases and escalations, but that 4% average annual increase, we've managed to keep that, I think, pretty close to inflationary type increases. I think you've probably seen more cost pressure on the rural side of parks. But, you know, that flat line item in there is sort of what's changed that allocation over time.
I'm just noticing that Director Graham has her hand up. So Director Graham, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. So my question is to staff, because this presentation is not attached to eScribe. So I'm wondering if it will be attached or circulated. It would have been helpful for me to be able to like have this presentation for my use.
Yeah, through the chair, our apologies. Trying to just coordinate the meeting and coordinate all the information. It just came in a little bit late last night, so we will distribute this after the meeting.
And through the chair, Director Graham, I take full responsibility for that. Don't blame Joe.
Is it possible to send it to her right now? Since
I can send it to her if I have Wi-Fi here. I'll get it on my phone.
Through the chair, this is Jenna. I certainly can distribute the presentation right now to all the commission members.
Thanks, Jenna.
Okay. So just in closing, can I get to the last one here unless there's any other questions on it?
Maybe since it's on my mind, may I?
Yeah, go ahead.
And thanks for the book. I was going to be at home at the book and do it, and then I missed you guys, so I thought, well, I'll come in, Happy New Year and everything. Forgot it. On our budget, Chris's, 2023, someone moved the screen.
I'm sorry.
I put my head down for a second.
Joe's just like,
Oh my God. Anyway, the numbers don't quite align because in my budget in 2023, I've got 965, not 1.068, so 100,000 difference. So maybe just so I don't ponder that for the rest of the meeting, we could help my mind.
Yeah, through the chair. Are you looking at the requisition line?
Requisition.
Yes. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, so I took a look at the expense of the service, and I backed out sort of any of the grant funded capital sort of, because sometimes you'll use surplus from the prior year to lower the requisition. So I was just trying to take a look at what the actual budget was, not accounting for any prior year surplus that would have reduced the requisition.
So yeah, through to the directors, you'd have to look at the total expense line and then what was budgeted from grants. So you can see like things like grants and grants specified or community works. So those things, I think, is what Chris is saying, is that he removed. So like you would remove the expense and you remove the revenue.
Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, I just wanted to sort of look at it consistent more on the operating costs of the park. and take out that lumpy sort of, we got a grant, we did a project, pull that out.
Got it.
Yep.
Apples to apples.
Kind.
Okay, great.
Close enough.
And I think, through the chair, one of the sort of salient points from this is absolutely what Chris said, trying to compare apples to apples with the operating costs, seeing that the rural parts have really, almost gone up 100%, right? From 500,000 to 929,000 now. The contribution to Nelson and Salmo has stayed consistent throughout, stayed the same despite those costs also going up. But to Chris's previous point, our costs have gone up about 4% year on year. And so just highlighting that change, that it probably makes not that it probably, that it does make sense that an increase in funding to the Salmo Nelson side probably makes sense at this point, or does make sense at this point.
It's just so, because I don't know if there's any public on, but also our ones that are recording this. It's just not Salmo and Nelson. It's Kokanee that gets 10 and Weimer gets 1,500. So that's what makes up the 386,000 is the 4, not just so if there's anybody, right?
Weimer's 2.
Oh, Weimer's 2,000. Okay. But there's 4 that's in that 300, because I don't know if we're being,
Let's assume we are. It's a public meeting.
yeah.
So, through the chair, I appreciate that breakdown. I wasn't sure the exact allocation between some of those other parks and municipal parks, so that's perfect.
Okay. Now I think we're next slide, right?
Yeah.
We never.
So yes, just as Chris Johnson said, I think the reason we wanted to highlight these items and what became apparent to us when looking at these and analyzing our costs going through the budget process as well is that we'd like to see some additional contribution from the service to bring us back to covering off the costs of those regional parks that are outside of the rural region. And then also maybe look to putting something in that contribution agreement that would reflect sort of annual inflationary type considerations as well.
Okay. Any further questions? Go ahead, awkward.
These two know me that I ask lots of questions. The one thing that I'm wondering is that the contribution to Kokanee, do they not request it each year, or do we just have it that we give it each year
For the interpretive center.
for the interpretive center?
So you did have a presentation from the visitor center this year. It is not a request. They don't have to make a formal request. They have to provide certain information in order to get the grant. And that would be the same for, for example, the Nelson Cycling Club grant as well.
Yeah, that's more of a community organization coming forward to ask us to add programming on top of a provincial park
And that's why I bring
versus a
it up.
partner,
And that's why I bring it up is because that interpretive center is in that 386.
Correct.
Nothing else is. So in a contribution thing, how would that play out? They have to present to us in order to have an increase.
I think for this
Oh,
though.
sorry, but
Do you see where I'm going with that?
Go ahead.
Oh, I understand the question. Normally, if someone wishes to increase the grant, we don't have a formal process of asking if that's required. Normally they would come and make the presentation. So the only group, and I want to keep the city of Nelson separate.
Yeah.
But the only group that maybe there's not a direct affiliation as a municipality is the Nelson Cycling Club that has come and made presentations to request their grant to be increased. I think in the last year it was 20,000 to 40,000. But they did come, so they do if they are thinking that they need more funding, we ask them to come and make a presentation to commission. And in some ways, in conversations with this, between us, between Chris and myself and Chris, I said, you know, it'd be good for you to come and talk to commission about that because that informs the budget discussion.
And through the chair, as you know, we each sign a contribution agreement every year, and then that's where, it's signed, sealed.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure because of them not being a municipality, is how does that fit in this whole thing? Because there's other groups, as Joe has said, that comes individually and they're not in this line item, so.
Yeah.
And sorry, and through the chair, just to be clear, the 20,000 for Nelson Cycling is in that grant. It's part of the 380, part of the 386. Because it's 350, 20, 10, 4, 2. That's 386.
Okay, I wanna grab Cheryl online. She's been patiently waiting, and I'm not quite sure how long she's been patiently waiting, but longer than this conversation's been on. Cheryl?
Thank you. No, my question is right along this conversation, so thank you. I'm just trying to understand this 386. So we've got 386,000 in grants. So 350 is going to the city of Nelson for Lakeside Park. 20 is going to the Nelson Cycling. I also have notes that Weimer and the front of Kokanee Creek are getting some grants out of here. So how much are they getting?
So Friends of Kokanee Creek are getting 10. Village of Salmo is getting 4. Weimer, the Murray Park is getting 2.
Supplemental?
Yeah, just supplemental. Just I know I'm the only new director here, but I've been kind of hearing Director Newell, talk about this bump that happened in 2018. Like, how much was that bump?
It would have been 350. And Tom, would you mind giving us a bit more of that history around the table? Or you want staff to do it? Joe, give us a bit of give us some back.
Yeah, so I can't recall without going back if we were already contributing 20,000 to Nelson Cycling at that point in time, but the primary bump at that point in time was the 350 to the city of Nelson, the 10,000 to the Kokanee Visitor Center, the 4,000 to the village of Salmo, and the 2,000 to the park in one.
Now, I wasn't sitting at that table. You guys had started to discuss this before we kind of came along. So can you just give a little bit of a back history on the discussion of the day? Like, it was essentially an evaluation. Tom, do you want to help?
Well, through the chair,
I drove home yesterday and I'm in pain, so I'm not.
are you okay?
Yeah, sort of. Okay.
Canziness to get you anything or?
No, I'm taking my painkillers.
Okay.
Make me nosy. Hope you can tell. Okay.
Sorry, Hans. Let us know if you need anything.
I know I'm listening and trying my best, but.
I just assumed you didn't like my question. Which is appropriate.
I didn't hear your question. But I missed. I got my name and that was it. You want to repeat the question?
No, we're gonna ask Joe for a little back history on the 350 contribution and the 2K to Weimer and Salmo. So,
Yeah, so through the chair, that conversation spanned a number of years. Spanned a number of years. We looked at a number of different scenarios at that point in time. We actually looked at reconfiguring the regional park service, who the participants were, in a number of different ways. For all of the participants, so for Village of Salmo, E, F, and G, even with the larger contribution to the city of Nelson, by having the city of Nelson as a participant in the service, still left, in terms of taxation, still left the rural residents. It was a better sharing agreement for them. Now, the fundamental question that we were trying to address at that time, because it really isn't just as simple as counting up residents. Assessment, as Chris said, assessment is just the way it is. So that's almost something we don't control. That's the way we have to tax by our bylaw. But the real question is about service delivery and those pieces. So that is what we tried, as staff, we tried to bring that conversation back to, was about who was using the facilities, are they regional in nature? And I think all of those answers, I think, are pretty clearly yes. And I'm not, sorry, right now, I just want to be clear here. I'm not arguing for an increase for the city of Nelson. I'm just trying to talk about
this is history of what led to this.
So what we tried to present at that time is that these are truly regional facilities. In every regional park system, you're going to have a park like Lakeside. Like Lakeside is a different, absolutely, it is a different, we had this conversation amongst staff at the regional district. Lakeside is a different level of service. And I think it provides value to the greater community at that different level of service than what we might maintain Tagum at or even Cottonwood. But those things change. Like, so for example, we've increased, part of the reason for the increases in the regional park service are the increased level of service at Cottonwood. We've substantially made that park a better place to visit. Same with Morning Mountain, same with Tagum Beach. So, and we've expanded those parks as well. So those things have all changed. So I think what this is that it's going to need to be another conversation. And it really is about what is regional and, you know, how we want to move forward. I think if we think just for me, from a budgeting perspective, even if we were to maintain what we are funding, like the theory of what we were funding from 2018 seems like it was super long time ago. But if we were to even consider that, we would know that just intuitively that costs have gone up. So there is a conversation there. I think what Chris Jury is in particular has separated out those capital costs, because those costs were decisions made by the city of Nelson. It wasn't that you were involved in that decision making to make those improvements. So, you know, those are the kinds of conversations that we have to come to, and it probably is time for that agreement to evolve. The reason that this came now, the reason it's before budget discussions, is that we know that you may ask us to do a report. You may ask us to look at it and try to provide some other context to it.
Go ahead, Lockwood.
And just to add a little bit more, just for Cheryl's knowledge, is that Area E only contributed, none of us did, only contributed the amount to the interpretive center. And we decided as a group is that that is truly a regional thing that benefits everybody as people come through all of our communities to get to that and may come back into our communities after being there. So I just wanted to add that little piece of how that got there.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. It had previously received a pretty steady flow of grants, and those, I don't know what that situation is, if they still are getting grants, but it was chosen that this would be a more stable model for what was considered a very valuable regional service promoting parks and the ecosystem in the Coos.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any? Perfect.
Supplemental.
No.
I thought it was 20 to go. Then the numbers didn't add up.
No, it was 10. 20 to the Nelson site.
Yeah. And supplemental, didn't we give them 40 last year to cycling?
No,
Remember
sorry,
they asked for 40 and,
sorry, through the chair.
sorry guys, but this is all, you know.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Through the chair, they requested 40. There was deliberation around the table. The decision was 20.
So I must have given them a bunch. Yeah, right.
Sorry, through the chair.
Through the chair, area F may have contributed.
After? Yeah, and there's the S107 grant and those things that we've done as well. Remember the,
Old Morning Mountain.
correct. The old Morning Mountain service, we moved that money.
Oh,
into
that's how we did it,
S202,
yes.
And then
Director Graham highlighted that.
Yeah.
Thanks. So that's
So
what that extra.
that will ask will come back to us at some point this year. Next year.
Probably.
Sounds like you just plugged the hole for a couple days, for a couple more years.
For the cycling club? Or who?
Is that in?
through the chair.
Yeah, through the chair. So the grant, just because it got to the end of the year, the grant looked like in this budget coming in, coming out, because it just, the contribution agreement wasn't really signed before the end of the year in 2024. So that is actually in and out in this, but that 21 was from last year when that discussion happened. So that contribution.
Okay.
Yeah, and through the chair, I think the two, we even shouldn't even mention the S207 because it really was a different thing than what Cycling Club was asking. The money from S207, which is the old Morning Mountain, or the old recreation area defined E, defined F service. Yeah, that funding was for a specific capital project in the park.
Okay.
Sorry, I think it was in lieu of a community works funding grant at the time, right? It was, instead of providing that, it was, let's get rid of the funding that's in there, it's just sitting there and it's an easier way to do that.
Any other background on the external group contributions that we're making?
No background, just a question.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on to a new round of questions from the illustrious Mayor Lockwood. Go ahead.
When we talk about ad inflationary, as we listen to all the wild numbers that are going on out there, and do we use Canadian inflationary or do we use BC inflationary? Because we are different.
Well, you're just doing our cost inflationary.
Yeah, so through the chair, I think it's a conversation anyway, when we maybe go into the details of how a contribution agreement will be structured, but I think the fact that we're recognizing some form of cost escalation will be helpful so that we're not, at a flat state for a number of years and then coming back and then having to have these conversations about, much higher than inflationary increases in 1 year. I think what folks want with their taxation is just something consistent over time and not have these big jump ups. So just something that sort of helps fund that in a smoother manner rather than kind of flat and then higher increases in a particular year.
So if I may, I'm hearing essentially we've got the proposal here for an increased amount of funding and some inflationary increases being added into the language for our contribution agreements as they get renewed. And so I'm hearing some direction to staff to come back at a future meeting after thinking about what these contribution agreements look like, almost a policy. We've got the external, but we've also got the kind of natural partners. I would be interested to check in with Salmo and see what the costs look like on their side for their part, because I think that's going to be informed in what might end up in a contribution policy. And then bring that back to a future commission so we can actually discuss something and set some principles. I'm not sure how the rest of the table feels, but for me, it feels good to set up some language as to what the expectations for these are, as opposed to ad hoc agreeing to differences in changes in price, but lay something down for future commissioners to say, we agree to the BC CPI index, or we agree every 3 years, we're going to look at what the cost changes are and adjust anything above or below or not. That we agree that we're going to look at some of these external community organizations that we've also bundled them in some sort of language that's in there, allows them some certitude to know what's going to go on in the future, but also gives us the space to let them go over time and prune them, for lack of a better term, as it comes due. But I don't envision a complex policy, but I envision some language. Does anyone want to second that and let staff kind of come back to us after they've contemplated with Salmo and the City of Nelson staff? Lockwood?
So I'm feeling that this proposal has been brought to us for this year going forward. What I'm hearing from the chair is that staff is going to come back to us after budget has been accepted, because our next meeting is March 25th. And we've already adopted the 5-year financial plan as the RDCK. So what I'm hearing from you is that we look at future, not this year going forward, but next year going forward, if we are waiting for staff to come back with something.
Do you feel that timeline, is this language we could talk about and work into the budget, or do we need to really, do this ad hoc and then think about the language after? Or can we somehow thread this needle together?
I think we may need to make a decision about this year.
Yeah.
And then we would sit down and have that conversation. I think it's going to be, it's something that I would involve, for example, Yev would, just to think about how do you put something in that respects the decision-making table, this one and the City of Nelson's decision-making table as well.
Okay. So do you still need a motion from us to come back?
So through the chair, I think you can, right now, you may want, if the commission feels that they would like to see a longer term agreement for the contribution agreement. So it's not like right now we're literally doing that every single year. If you would like to see a longer term agreement, is to give us that direction to do that.
And bring it back as a draft to be approved.
Yeah.
Okay, then I will withdraw the motion I have on the table, and I'll put forward that we have a longer term agreement brought forward for us for consideration in draft form at a future meeting. Second that.
And
that a question or
where I
second?
second it is, can we have the long-term agreement with the municipalities and not with the other contribution?
Yeah, totally, for the natural partners.
Okay, I will second that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Anyway,
Understood.
Okay.
If that's what
any concerns? Go ahead, Tom.
So in regard to, so that includes the park in Weinberg?
Through the chair, my understanding as staff is that that would include our contributions to the Village of Salmo and the City of Nelson, as those are the municipally run parks.
And we could deal with it supplementally, just deal with the other 2 or 3 contributions.
Yeah,
No, that's as good as.
sure. Go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, I like the idea of a longer term agreement. What I am worried right now is what's happening across the border. We may see mild inflation next year, or expenses just going right up from that. But at the same, nobody knows anything. And we certainly have, all the years I've been around this is the year we have the least certainty of what the future brings. And the future may bring that least certainty. You said February the 1st with that, so we would hear about, what may kick in for us, who knows, within a month or two. And so we may have inflation. Who knows? It could be. I'm guessing back to 5% or 6% even. I don't know the cost of getting stuff because of the tariffs. So if we can make the agreement in such a way that, if we do have flexibility, because I am worried about it really. But that said, we gave them a pretty big hit last year, and we can just sort of move down a little bit here.
Well, and I think part of this is if we're mapping it over a couple of years. Right now, we're at 0% inflation on this number. If we agree to an absolute 2 or 3% at least, versus it being indexed to the broader scope, those are conversations I think we discussed with the draft in front of us. Before we go off of hands, though, I'm unfamiliar with the community organization that runs the Weimer Park. And when I say natural partners, I certainly mean natural partners. But then I'm also Weimer being a human settlement, it starts being in that gray zone.
The Weimer Community Association runs the park. And the associated things with it, such as the paved play area and the skating rink, the whole thing,
I'm not sure how other people feel, but I feel like the Weimer Park is one of the ones you would look at, even though they're not formally incorporated.
We have been receiving, I thought we had been receiving something.
So through the chair, yes, the Weimer Association for it's specific to Hans, I may get this wrong, the Murray Park?
Yeah, the George Murray Park.
George Murray, yeah. $2,000 a year.
If we could, when we look at this, I would like to see the cost I'd like to ask that organization what the costs look like and consider them with Salmo and us. It's not,
The reason I would like to, and it has nothing to do with Weimer or Kokanee or the Nelson Bikes, is municipalities are stable. Any association, whether it be the interpretive center or whatever, is what we would classify as unstable because they're a society and societies can come and go, or they can produce or not produce. And that's why I would, in our agreement, would like to stay with municipalities. And not that we wouldn't contribute to the George Murray. But if something happened and that society or association just defunct for whatever reason, the agreement, we would be chasing after that. So that's what my reason is. Municipalities are stable.
They're a totally different class, recognizing. If we bring back a draft for consideration, I would want us to have reached out to the Weimer organization to ask what their costs are looking like. I'm just going to say it because when we're talking about Salmo, Weimer, and the city of Nelson, we're talking about park contributions to human settlements, specifically to deliver kind of the core bread and butter day-to-day activities that happen in those communities versus Nelson Cycling is an additional layer above and beyond the interpreter center, again, additional layer of programming above and beyond and both outside of the community core park. And I just because Weimer is unincorporated, I feel like we're naturally in a gray zone with them. It'd be at least good to know what if they're seeing similar cost pressures.
Through the chair, what I could suggest is that we deal with the municipalities first.
Yeah.
That will give us then maybe a little bit of a model to have that conversation. I think there's a big enough chunk to chew on there. Just minding the time that we have as staff, sometimes tracking down volunteer organizations can be difficult to have the long-term planning focus that we're trying to do too.
Okay.
It's
That's, I just wanted to have the discussion. Hans?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I understand against the ability after all. The Weimar Hall was built and the association was formed in 1950 to pay for the hall. And of course it was, and the grounds have been there since 1893. And the community has maintained it since then. The cost of maintaining it, well, last year we bought a new board for $3,900 or something. So riding that kind of hour to do the field, because the field is mowed once a week. And it's a regular all-ground field. I imagine you could work that out and do the cost of operating, but with considering the mower and things like that, that's just what it is. And the association runs a number of things. As I mentioned, it also does the skate or the paved area which is now being iced because the weather is cold enough, and we have a snow blower to remove the snow in that. I don't know. I'm trying to think, perhaps 2 years old or something like that. So it's not a big proposition, but it is a steady one, and then bring on people, especially consider the taxation for that park is in the neighborhood of $8,000. Excuse me. Oh boy, it got stabbed. Anyways, let me give my sakes. Yeah, I killed them yesterday, Don. And the week all night, took a bunch of pain pills, and that's what made me dozy. Because I'm dozy all the time, but dozy is normal. Anyway, they get an $8,000 grant as a regular grant need that we tax for the people of Weimar. For that, they agreed to pay for that. But it only covers very little the insurance. It doesn't, and the heat, part of the heating bill for the hall. The rest of it's all community based.
Okay, that's good context. I appreciate that. Okay, so we'll tackle the motion we have on the table now is to tackle the munis, looking at their costs, getting some complementary costs to come out of Salmo, so we have comparators, and then see what we can look at for a draft for this year, with the understanding that that draft will include what that might look like over a longer term, potentially 3 years. Kind of get away from this every single year evaluation. Are there any objections to doing that? Seeing none, that passes. And we'll see it at a future meeting. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for giving us an update.
Appreciate it.
And thanks for taking such good care of the park.
Yeah, no, I'll pass that on.
So we're gonna do an update. You guys are certainly more than welcome to. Oh, you want a coffee? Good. We're going on a bio break for till 10:15. 8 minutes.
No. Yes, you made it. Don't we need more coffee?
You need more than 8 minutes.
He needs more coffee.
I don't really.
There's a
What I
coffee
want.
for Tom.
We're gonna get one of those long hoses and you can just siphon it.
No, I don't drink much, but.
There's a cup of coffee for you. There's probably 1.5 cups there.
reassemble ourselves.
Are there any other present? Oh, I'll just.
If we could get a camera or two, that'd be really great. We'll have some small interruption. I guess coffee's still brewing on this side. Hopefully you guys have updated your coffee on that side. Cheryl, yep, we've got her. Great. Let's take us on to 9.1. Service 202, Regional Parks, Nelson, Salmo, E and F, update and financial plans.
Through the chair, would you like me to have the financial plan on the screen, Cheryl? I don't know if that helps just to follow along.
Yeah, Cheryl, would you like it up on the screen or you got it in front of you?
I've got it in front of me.
This one was distributed, so great. Let's see the happy faces and go from there. Do you want to lead us off, Joe? Find yourself.
So through the chair, Carrie and I will tag team, and Carrie will probably have most of the detailed information. So through the chair, so let's just see how this actually printed out. Okay, so the way this is in the package, oh shoot. That's what happens sometimes when you have, we're going to start with page 8 of the agenda, which is the overview of the service. So this is the complete budget, and then we will go down through some of the work orders, which remember all roll up into this. So the budgets after this are not new from this. So page 8 of the agenda.
So page 8 is the small draft financial plan. It's the number 708,347 at the very bottom.
What, sorry, I was looking.
So it's page
308. Page 1 of 15.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So at the moment, so just again to understand, we still are in that draft, the draft part of our budget process. So for example, things like the general admin and IT doesn't come into this service, it comes into A104 and A109, which are the allocation services for parks and community services. But some of those fees haven't been, we haven't got the final numbers on them yet. So on this page, you'll see these numbers again as we go through, but just to note that at the moment, the requisition is planned at a 2% increase. So planned at a 2% increase. The prior year's surplus from last year is projected to be 285. Carrie, Craig, and myself feel that that is conservative. It may be more. All right. But we think that should be the base for it. There are some grants that Carrie alluded to, so just to ensure where that the in-out is. So the reason that you see the grants at 407, so sorry, in the expenses, grants, that's line 57010. The reason you see it at 407, 403 and not 386 is the grant to the Nelson Cycling Club, which is being funded from S207. Right, so that actually is not, so that is not an increase to the city of Nelson. It's just that flow through from the, that we were directed to do at the board table in 2024. So it is an in and out. And that the actual, where that money is right now, that's actually in surplus, because that's actually part of the surplus coming forward from last year.
I've got a question from Mayor Lockwood.
I just want to understand why we went from S207 and put it into S202. And I'll just say, to give a little bit of reason why I'm asking, is because I'm going to call it the Salmo Cycling, but it's not, it's called the Trail Society, that has trails all in Area G continuously come to Salmo asking for grants, and I continuously tell them to come to this commission because Nelson Cycling, who I don't know if all of the trails are in Nelson or if they're in EF only, or they're in all three. And they say that they have not had a good experience. Don't know why, because I don't think that they've actually physically come.
Through the chair, you're correct.
Yeah, okay. I just think it's
Nelson Cycling has come to wreck.
I think it's just what it is that they don't want to go anywhere past. They just want to get it out of Salmo and Area G because they feel that those are the people that are benefiting from the bike trails. So I'm wondering why we took that whatever amount it is, because I don't know what it is, from S207 and put it into S202.
Through the chair, because in 2024, we actually had no financial plan for S207. So there was actually, we had no budget to expand. We'd have to actually create a whole financial plan in order to do that expenditure. So S207, so the funds from so those reserve funds historically come from when the lodge at Morning Mountain burned down and we were paid insurance money. So in fact, we actually have transferred funds from that reserve fund into S202 before to complete capital projects on the hill. So that is the reason why we did it through this, for no other reason than we actually didn't have a financial plan for it in 2024.
So supplementary, I do remember that now, and I apologize. There's just so many names going around, and I saw Blewett, Bonington, and Tagum, and I get very confused because it's not my area. So I apologize on that. So this is just a one-time thing to fund a capital project that's happening at that area that this actual service is funding. Okay, I will make that note so I don't ask again.
No problem. And through the chair, this will deplete the reserves in S207. So there's no taxation going into S207. The reserves are now depleted. So you can essentially, what we got as insurance money is now fully used. So I don't think you'll see this situation happening again. The service is still there, and the directors or the board could resurrect it unless they collapse the service.
Okay, I see a question. Is this on the same?
Yeah, and just quickly, just understand that prior to Morning Mountain becoming a regional park, S207 was funding the original development of the park before it became a regional park. Once it became a regional park, then the funding now comes of S202 as part of the regional.
Okay.
Exactly. They used to do the Morning Mountain ski hill, of course.
Yeah.
With regards to the Salmo Trail, I gave them $120,000. I think it was 2 years ago to get them going, but they have not come to me and asked for any money or anything since. And they also have money from requests and things like that. They're different than a lot of the water parks where nobody gets paid. We're all supposed to be volunteer, but the trail people get paid for trail development. I'm not going to argue with the validity of that. Good for them. But they haven't come to us because we become a service. And in which case, I think they've asked, and I said, certainly you can. What you have to do, and I explained the procedure about, how we have to go to referendum for it, because, at least in our area, there's going to be an area service, or we want, to start the service, and they said that was not what they wanted to do. So instead they just come to me from time to time and ask for, $5,000, $10,000, and I think they go to the village and do the same kind of thing. They still get a lot of grant money.
Okay. Great.
So, So through the chair, that is the reason for the grant line increase this year. It's nothing else. It's just that contribution to Nelson Cycling Club as per last year's resolution, which is different than the $20,000 of funding that we give the cycling club every year. The contribution to reserve. So when we did this financial plan, because of the surplus that we are carrying forward, we could have actually, taxation could have mostly almost stayed completely flat, if not a little bit lower. Actually, I think it was a little bit lower than last year. But I increased the contribution from reserve because next year, if we complete all our projects, and that surplus is not there, we would have potentially a significant increase in taxation. So I just want you to know that the planned contribution to reserve was 100,000. Right now it says 151. If there's, should we increase grants to the city of Nelson or to others or things like that, other considerations in the budget, there's 51,000, but still keeps taxation actually what would be below inflation in 2024. So I just want you to be aware of that. Well, the budget was 2024, so it would be on the 2000. So the inflation from 2024 would be more than 2%. It would be about 3.3 or something like that. So the next page, page 9, I'm going to turn some of this over to Carrie. Sorry, I'm going to turn this over to Carrie to go through the work orders, and then it'll come back to me to the overhead account at the end. So Carrie this will lead you through some of the projects and in each of the parks, and you can see that particular park breakdown.
Through the chair. So on page 9, so we still have some remaining Trans-Canada Trail Accessibility Fund grant funding left from the project. And we also have the $36,915 growing community funds that was provided to us in 2020.
You may just need to let them know which part we're talking, because it's just a code and it doesn't really.
Oh, so I'm just looking at page 9, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of read it. Okay, yeah, it's like under grants and then transfer.
No, one part. It doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't say?
It's got a nice.
Sorry, yeah, I guess we have acronyms for these. I just look at those. So, Cottonwood Lake Regional Park. So for Cottonwood Lake, again, there's the Trans-Canada Trail Community Initiative Accessibility Funds that were part of what we did for the original sort of park development. And then we had the growing community funds from last year. And so we do have to, spend those funds specifically this year and next year. So part of the project that we wanted to continue doing, that we, was always part of the plan, was to continue a trail. So we've done half a trail that actually goes from kind of give out the beginning, that goes all the way into the park. So if you're parking outside or there's a walking trail, and that was always meant to be a loop trail up into the new area that was purchased by the regional district a few years ago. So that's part of the project, as well as the washrooms that are there now. They were a donation from Cass at the time. The washrooms don't actually super satisfy kind of our need in there for what we were hoping for a few reasons. So one of the things that we're going to do is actually just get our standard washrooms that we have everywhere else and kind of replace them there. It's not a significant cost, because what we will do is transfer some of the funds, because we'll move those up to Glacier Creek. few of the reasons why, just to know, is like doors open out, the spacing inside isn't necessarily accommodating some of the use that we have in that park anymore. Of course, you have winter use, you're trying to open a door out, it costs us more in sort of maintenance trying to do it, even though we put a bit of a vestibule on there. So that's just part of the grant. Originally in the grant, we had actually for washrooms, CASA came in and said, oh, we're gonna kind of put these in, but they don't actually suit the area. So that's part of the grant that we have. We'll get a little bit back on that, but that's this page in this project.
On washrooms, Diana.
On the washrooms. Are you talking about the washrooms that are in the parking lot at Cottonwood Lake? How do you take toilets, walls, doors?
Yeah, through the chair.
No.
Actually, literally.
But let me finish.
Log truck. Bravo.
And put them in another park when they're not suitable for Cottonwood Lake. I know how we physically move stuff.
Okay.
Don't.
Right. So through the chair, Glacier Creek is not open in the winter. So we have them there, right? So part of the issue is the snow issue that we have around these,
Okay.
as well as the slab wasn't necessarily properly poured. So we would have to replace this slab kind of anyway, because of the way that it drains down, and we're literally getting water that's coming down potentially into the tanks. So we were gonna have to kind of do that with the slab anyway. So these particular washrooms, the way that they were built, again, the doors open out. It's supposed to be for accessibility, but they weren't really taking into consideration winter use. So in the winter, when we bring them up to Glacier Creek, they're not used in the winter, so we don't have to worry about any of that. In the summertime, they actually fit Glacier Creek Regional Campground much better than they do our park currently here.
And the fresh slab.
Yes.
Supplement. This does not make us look good. We have spent money, so the toilets might have been donated, but we've spent money on putting these toilets there that we are now going to move. That is going to be a significant cost because they've already been moved there and now we're going to move them away. So it doesn't make staff or this commission look very
Before we get to, I hear you, and I hear you. Did you want to weigh in before I say something?
Sure. So just through the chair. So the good thing is that we had to replace the washrooms at Glacier Creek anyways.
Okay.
So it's actually a good switching of the resources.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. That actually
Thanks.
I guess if I added that we
Yeah.
were replacing the washrooms at Glacier, and it seemed to be for the amount that we'll get something paid back, as well as the washrooms that we have as our standard are better fit for our parks and the use.
So we're multi-solving to accommodate for the slab issue. My question, though, along the same vein, is just understanding when we take a donation like this, what does, is this just staff learnings, and in the future there'd be more oversight and review of what's going on, or is this, we need to really consider that we should take cash donations and not in-kind donations, or where does that look like when people want to donate by way of doing, but then the doing turns into not to our standard, and our standard needs to be, those are hard to expect ahead of time, but they've certainly the nuance of us doing it.
Yeah, through the chair, good question. And I agree, some of it's a bit of a learning process. We'd worked with CASA in many different ways at different parks.
Yeah.
And, we've had good success. It was something at the time that we were trying to kind of keep costs down as well as part of it, and to understand that this is it's grant money specifically for that. We said in the grant that we would be providing the washrooms.
Mm-hmm.
We had a partner come along and say, hey, we have these washrooms. Again, if we were to do it again, we would probably have a little bit more control over pouring the slab and things like that, because we're good at it now. We've done it. But again, at the time, it was us thinking to ourselves that this is an opportunity to put funds into other aspects of that park at the time. So a little bit of both, I would say.
A little bit of both, so a little wisdom for the future. Okay. Are we good to move on? Go.
So if we turn over to the next page.
Page 9, Tagging Beach parking lot.
10, and this is Tagging Beach.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just so I will make sure we know what park it is. And this is, again, area E and F had agreed to commit $100,000 in community works funds. As the reason we didn't actually apply for it last year is because we didn't quite have the final design and budgets. And of course, when you apply for these grants, they have a lot of questions on these things. And we were still in that phase to get that. So as our last meeting, I think we described that we had a final, kind of design look with SNT Engineering. So we're just waiting for that final design to come in. And then we'll be putting forth, kind of estimated cost and budget for that. So you see your hands up.
Yep, hands.
Thank you. I'd like to see the entire complete design because we did buy that extra land, for a long time. And I know that I've been up and I look what's happening out there, but if you send me a schematic, so to speak, of what it looks like, including the land along the exit trail and all the rest of that, because there are still more plans for the site.
Yeah, so through the chair, as soon as we get that design, we would be bringing it to the commission.
So you can bring it to us for information at our next.
Yeah. Did we get it before March 12th? But yes, that would be the plan.
Okay, great. Director Graham, I recognize you.
Thank you. So through the chair, just the question on the community grants fund, and you did answer it saying that it hasn't been applied for, but I'm just wondering, has it been reserved? Because when I ask for a balance of what I have in my community works fund, for that particular fund, we don't get the same reports that we get for our community development and our discretionary. And I kind of keep on the side things that I have committed to. And I'm just wondering if I ask for a balance from Ashley today, if it would show that $75,000 is already committed or not. Do you know?
Yeah, through the chair is in the past, when a resolution comes from here and goes to the board on a community works fund, usually then that is to grant. So you can maybe answer that, but we've done that in the past.
You need to check.
Yeah, I'll have to check. But often when it goes to the board, right, that's checked, and those community works funding, because it's through a kind of resolution at the board, and it's usually passed on to them. But I will double check.
I can check. So I don't think so, but let's see.
Yeah, have we voted on this at the board level, or has it just been committed?
I think it's just been committed.
Correct. Yeah.
Through the chair, normally the application needs to be done. What Carrie was just being cautious about was making sure that we had the complete, the actual design and complete cost for the application, because it does need to be reported on. But it may be the case. Carrie will check after the meeting, and unless Tom, you can confirm if you can see the committed funds on there.
I'll look on mine to see if it's there.
But we can we'll definitely be dealing with that.
Yeah, we'll deal with some of that back office. Let's continue on.
Okay, so if there's no question, we go to page 11, which is Balfour Beach. So our budget for this, you can just kind of see that, we still, every year we spend a fair bit of time there, because it's years of fuel treatment done with the amount of trees that we do have kind of coming down and burning, as well as invasive. So that's something that kind of came through the board it was 2023 that it was directed for CKIS to do some of the work that we had, the identified areas. And so in the last couple of years, we've been doing a fair bit of that internally, dealing with invasives within the parks and things like that. So that, you'll see that amount at the top. And then the benefits. So what we've done in the last little while, we've also been renting instead of sort of putting a washroom in, we've actually been renting porta potties and having them outside. It seemed to work for now. We're still looking into the future as we get all of our other projects done. The one thing that we did look at a couple of years ago that was brought to the table was a urine diversion toilet, similar to what they use in some of the provincial parks. Due to the accessibility of the site to get in there to pump or to things like that, because we'd literally have to drive along the water frontage to get to anywhere doing that. So that's why we're looking into the urine diversion toilet. So that's, and if there's any other questions on that, we can kind of.
Cunningham?
Thank you. What about expansion of that property? One of the alternate directors, I think this Josh was talking to me about that the other day, that he walks up that way all the time, and he says, we should expand it and get an area in mind or something with
Nope.
that he was talking about expansion and how, in his mind anyway, the finished area would look. Has anybody done anything other than just his contributions about that, or?
Yeah, through the chair, I don't remember any conversation about expansion of the area, and I don't really know. The only expansion to that would be into the MOTI pit above, and that actually sits right now under section 16, I believe, with First Nations interests.
I'm just going to put the question, like, Graham, have you and Josh had conversations you're aware of? So let's maybe leave it between Josh, don't want to speak to you, but you and Josh could talk about it, and if it wanted to come forward, you would bring it.
That would be.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all on the same page there, but thanks for
That would be a good idea, because he just, when we were talking, he mentioned that he goes out that way almost every morning.
Yep.
And because he lives nearby.
Yeah, we'll leave it with Graham.
He had thoughts about expansion of the site that would make it more easier to work with, et cetera, et cetera. And I know nothing at all. I mean, I've been out there a couple of times, that's about it. But I thought I'd pass it on because it may be a good idea.
Yeah, it sounds like they'll have a little chat and explore the merits of it before they bring it back to us if they want.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole of outhouses.
I might pull you back out.
We have had discussions about not being able to start not bringing the debris inside of an outhouse to our waste facilities, and that we're supposed to try and get them going through municipalities. Where are we with this one in that sense? So whoever's picking up that waste, is it going to Nelson? Is it being produced that way, or are we still taking it to the Otishin?
We pay Andex to place it there. We pay them to remove it. So I assume that they follow the regulations of what they're supposed to do, and I can't answer that question.
We don't ask that question at this level. I'm sorry.
Sorry, so the actual, just want to be clear, they have the proper certification for doing
They're doing it.
they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't want to take us down this rabbit hole, but now what are we striving for between Sandy dumps in the city versus at our waste? Like, I know we're developing the spaces to do Sandy dumps.
Sorry, it was discussed in resource recovery about what is happening to outhouses, to septic fields, to RVs,
unmanaged.
All of that, because right now that is being taken to drying beds or whatever at our resource centers. And that was something that came through parks at one time, and I don't remember what year, that we talked about is what do we do within parks in the regional district? What do we do with our waste?
We contract.
And we contract it out, but it's still our waste, whether we contract it out or not. If RDE decides that we will not be accepting, we still produce waste.
Yeah.
So have we
I just wanted that I wanted to understand the criteria. So, and we'll continue to have that discussion at resource recovery because it'll be beyond just our porta potties. There are porta potties everywhere. And so how we manage that at waste makes sense to figure out.
And through the chair, it is a concern, and
No waste concern.
it is a waste concern.
It's a resource recovery concern. Of which this may be some
This would be, it would be
minor
impactful.
an example. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so, and again, I can just kind of zip through here, you can tell me maybe if anyone has any questions for it. Probably be here for a really long time, but so Bonington, we've actually, it's not really any increase, we're kind of continuing to do the things that we're doing. The one thing that we do know now is that we have a groundskeeping and grass cutting contract, so we do know the cost now. We went in last year not really knowing costs as we did that, but put it out to 10-year. And so this is our kind of understanding of what those costs are now for those. If there's any questions, if not, we're going to move on to page 15, which is Pine Lake. Again, same thing. We now have our janitorial and garbage removal, etc. So we do understand and do have a decent idea of what those cost now. So there are still some work that we have to do. There's a bunch of slope stabilization and basically that we're working on in the area. Particularly because of a lot of the work that we had done. Anytime you disturb that soil, so we're working hard to kind of make sure we're on top of that, so we're not growing our increases in there with those sort of things. So,
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, Kerry, did you say you were changing the washers?
Yes.
At Cottonwood, and yet I may not see it here?
This is operational. If I see the OP, we had a previous, we started with
Thanks.
this capital.
No, that's good. That's good.
I thought I started having the same question. Yeah, okay. We got to,
So
Lockwood.
But this other one was just for the accessibility project. So as I'm with Tom, is operational. Is there another project that's gonna be Glacier?
Oh, sorry, yes, but that's in a different budget.
Oh, okay,
And it's already,
Yeah.
so,
okay.
both, it's a great question, because we just went through it yesterday, actually, with Director Watson and Director Hewitt. So the Glacier project is actually being funded by GCF as well. So there's actually a big capital project plan for Glacier this year as well.
Thank you.
okay, so if you want, we can go to page 15 for questions.
Yeah.
And that's James Johnson. So one thing in here that isn't necessarily, it should be early season, late season field treatment and tree removal. So if anyone's been down to James Johnson lately, I mean, we do have a number of, it's a very well used park, but there's some really big trees in there. And some of the big trees have started to kind of die off. So we do have to do a little bit of removal there on one specific one that has a target. And generally what we do with those big trees is we don't take them completely down, but we actually lock them probably about 10, 15, 20 feet above the ground and let them kind of rot a little bit and create habitat for birds and things like that. Because these are very large firs generally, and it does take an awful long time for them to decay internally, the whole thing, but they start to decay at the top and you start having pieces fall off. So that's just a bit of the project in James Johnson that we have. I think I brought it, I'm pretty sure everybody knows about, I did bring it to the commission, I just can't remember. There's so many of these, but we did have the dump truck that went over the top and went down the hill. And then so there was my concern was there a fuel spill? Was there that? So they did that analysis through ICBC. They've removed anything that was contaminated. So it was just a small amount of fuel. They went, surveyed it. I'm still working with ICBC over just a few of the trees and plants and things like that that were kind of destroyed. I've said through that process, we'd like to get some of those trees back and planted. So we're still working through that. So I don't know how long ICBC takes, but I assume it'll be into 2026. But that is just part of James Johnson stuff that we're doing.
Thank you. And James Johnson, the blue trees really planted every single the ones that were taken up.
No, they were younger trees. There was one larger pine that was, I think it was 16 dBH, so 16 centimeters across, and So yeah, it's just trying to find evaluation of cost for those as well. So we're waiting through our CBC. I just had a conversation 2 weeks ago, so we're working on it.
Okay, great. So that was 15. Anything more on James Johnson? Takes us back to 14 maybe?
On page 6, we'll go to McDonald's Landing.
I think we missed it.
Northern. Oh, the important one. Right. So, okay, so that was on the other side of that. My apologies for that. Okay, Great Northern Data. So yeah, this one we have a lot of the work that we've been continuing to doing with some early season kind of brushing and burning and clearing. And then what we have this year that was, of course, we have our grading and dust control and the brushing contract. So one of the things that we spent a fair bit of time on staff time, because it is a very long corridor, and as we know, it starts to grow in. We've had a lot of it resurfaced. Other parts of it haven't, but if you don't maintain, the brushing along the side, you just get things growing in, sometimes within a year. So one of the things that we looked at, we did a trial last year of a flail mower. So it's a machine that goes and has the flail mower, goes along and basically cuts it out. So that contract we're looking at right now, and it's per kilometer. So that is part of what we had last year.
Go ahead, Lockwood.
Thank you. I look at all of these budgets that are for each part, and there's salaries in 2024. We budgeted salaries in everything, but we didn't budget any salary in this one. But we said that the budget was 144,000. We only spent 63,000.
So are all the costs been brought in at this point? Or we're still waiting for coding to happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of things that we're still waiting for. However, like I was mentioning before, there's a lot of these things in here for the contracted stuff that we didn't know last year because we were changing the way we were doing it. So one of the things with the contractor, with Riverside Farms for years, they managed the rail trail, right? So they did all the brushing. They didn't
manage the rail trail, they did the maintenance.
The maintenance, that's what you mean. Sorry, manage the maintenance of the contract or of the rail trail. And so having that taken away, knowing that what those costs are, and we weren't sure last year, so we had whether or not we were going to have a separate contract. We did a bunch of the work ourselves. And we realized that that wasn't our cost-effective way for our staff to be spending weeks on end by clearing that. And then, of course, you get into the different aspects of when can you do it? How do you do it? Is it spring? Is it fall? Is it summer? We have to make sure that we're doing a lot of this because last year we missed a bit of the window due to the fires. So as soon as the heat comes and the fires come, we can't do that sort of work. So we have to be a little bit more vigilant on making sure. So that's why we're actually working on getting that contract done now, so we know exactly when we can have that done. And I was kind of mentioning to Director Lockwood just on the break is one of the things that we have with our seasonal employee who's been now made as a full-time employee. This has now given us the time for our operations supervisor, myself, and Craig to sit down and actually know our work plan and try to get some of these contracts ready now. So we're not all of a sudden getting into, June and it's like, well, we need to get this contract and the contract takes 8 weeks to kind of get the contract going in the first place. And so it's allowing us to better know some of the things that we can do and when we can do. So that's some of the things with that, if that answers a little bit of your question.
No.
I'm gonna go to Tom.
Okay. As per an email that you and I shared from a person that cleans up the parking lot and what have you there, Andrew Murray.
This is Anderson Creek, correct?
Pardon me?
This is the Great Northern Trail parking lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had some suggestions, but better signage and what have you, so maybe we could talk about that. But also, there was talk of a washroom or the need of a washroom in that parking lot out there, that it's actually quite, well used for that. And I just wonder if, A, can we do it? B, whose responsibility is it ours because we're the lessee, and
Well, do we have?
C, should we? Because it seems like it's so well used. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention it at budget time.
I can answer through the chair. We did bring this up a couple years ago with MOTI, and Hugh at the time had said that they are not in favor of having a washroom on the trail. Now, again, that was a few years ago. We can certainly revisit it with them. But
Have we?
Yeah.
Could we? I don't think we're going to solve it here for the second, just because now that I'm thinking about it. But have we ever talked to the city about situating something in proximity?
Through the chair, two different locations that we're talking about right now. Tom is referring to the Sabota Road parking lot, but at Mountain Station. Sorry for that. At Mountain Station, yes, we have had some discussions with the city in the water line work. It has kind of fallen off the table, but there was some early discussions about whether we would want to co-locate an actual flushable washroom at the pumping, it's a pumping station that's there, correct? At the pumping station that's there. That really, I don't think we've had that's 2 years. But there could be an opportunity there for us to work with the city. But it goes back to the similar, we do have, for that kind of a permanent installation, we need Ministry of Transportation approval. Yeah.
On the lands proper.
Yes. So, but this brings me, because what we're actually talking about is planning.
Yeah.
And so I would like Mark to just, one of the significant pieces in this budget, and if we remember correctly, is that our renewal with the Ministry of Transportation, we are required to do a management plan. And Mark, I do need to go to the washroom. Funny enough, I don't know if it's all the talk about the washrooms, but if you could, so in particular, that's the line that's 54040.
We're at 11, so we might as well take a bio break.
Okay, and then Mark will just
go back to you.
Mark is in charge of that project. So.
Yeah, we're gonna we'll do a bio break. Good.
Yeah.
For everybody. We'll be back in 5-10 minutes.
Don't look at me like that. Out of the corner of your eye.
Are you talking at the end of like over by Troop? Not all the way down to
No.
Troop,
No,
that parking
but as you
spot?
start going down before the trestles, so there's a big one.
Oh, before
there.
the trestles.
Yeah, way before that, there's a parking lot that begins the journey down to the lake, and that's.
Oh, yeah.
Sabota.
Not
Sabota, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
above
what-
the health campus.
And just above the campus where the climbing
Yeah.
crags are. and
Yeah.
the-
So I know that we're not in meeting right now, but that's where, why wouldn't we be able to put an outhouse there? Like, I know that they don't want us to put something permanent, but that is quickly accessible. That is used by,
Well, we've got the kiosk, it's where the kiosk is,
Yeah.
right? Which could use enough mapping. This suggested better mapping, which he's right about as well. That could show the cross-country ski trails and everything.
Yeah, we were talking about this at City Council of, wouldn't it be nice when you went and you had the kiosk that it kind of gave you an overview of the regional network and told you where Lakeside was and told you where the Sabota parking lot was and told you there were washrooms, with
Cottonwood, it goes to Cottonwood.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It
then
just showed you the network.
And then big caution sign where you could get run over by an ATV.
Yeah, yeah. But like a cute one, right? Like a cute little like ATV.
or a horse, or a kid on an e-bike.
Or a horse, for sure. I don't know if we're muted, I hope we're not, so everyone gets entertained.
Yeah.
Everyone gets the benefit.
No, where I was
Okay, we'll see you
going with that,
guys
so I
back in 10 minutes, 10 after 11. Hey, we're mostly reassembled in the room here. Cheryl, are you with us? Craig, are you with us? Are we able to pick up and go?
Yeah, I'm here, Chair.
No, well, we're waiting on Cheryl more than anything, so we'll, sorry to rush you, Cheryl, but if you are ready to go, I'm sure everyone's ready to kind of keep going. Looks like we're good. Let's continue, on the conversation around planning, as I believe where we were at.
Yeah,
Mark?
Joe just was setting up, I think, the fact that there's $70,000 in the budget for the Great Northern Trail Management Plan. So when we're considering operational procedures or guidelines or capital projects, that is going to be a great opportunity, the management plan, to do public consultation, see what the public needs are, understand how we can best maintain that trail as a mixed-use trail, and then looking at how to optimize trailheads or visitor services. So the question of toilets, that's the Boulder Road, or Morning Mountain Station is a great opportunity there to look at what sort of services people desire and what are needed from sort of a health and safety standpoint within that management plan. And so there will be some recommendations for how to improve the overall trail experience. There, in the meantime, though, there are examples we have of, say, Belfort Beach, where it is possible to do something temporary until you're ready to do a longer term capital investment. But so there are opportunities to do temporary toilets. Those come at a cost, obviously, but it could be done. I'll just note that the Mountain Station and Sabota function as formal trailheads, somewhat established with parking, signage, trail entry kiosks. There are many other trail crossings as we head south towards Salmo, where there are no facilities provided. So just something to keep in mind that on the Nelson side of things is there are facilities in the southern part of the trail, very limited, rustic, parking on the side of the road type facilities. And I'm not saying that that's not what people want, but it's just Mountain Station and Sabota do see a lot of traffic. We do have numbers on those sites as well from our trail counters, and the number of people using Mountain Station and Sabota, here do you recall, but it's
The last time I looked, it was up to the 20,000 per month in the summertime.
we do have data that will help inform the type of amenities that are required.
It's a chicken and the egg and an egg and the chicken kind of thing. So we'll work that out in the planning process and get a level of service understood of where we're trying to make investments and where we're.
Thank you. And when we're talking about management plan, Weimer in the original management plan was designated as an amenity area. And as a result, we do have a couple of houses there which are being phased out. The signage now saying we've got the ones in the park open year round, so you can use the washrooms, flushing washrooms in the park. It's another couple hundred feet away, but
It's there.
yeah, it's there.
Yeah, great. Scanning the room, looking for curious people, seeing no one. Sorry, go ahead, Lockwood.
So I just want to go, when I look at this budget and I look at other budgets, and it showed that we budgeted 144,000 for this trail, for the entirety of the trail. And we only spent 63 on it, because I'm assuming that that we've got all numbers in, that this is correct.
I heard that there were still numbers being coded, so I don't know.
There's still some coming into that, so, but
Okay.
say it's 7.
Okay, so, let's say it's 70,
The majority of them.
majority, that then we're looking at, say if that's 70, that $70,000 that we budgeted, that staff felt that would be used for this trail, didn't get used.
Well, we budgeted 144.
Yes, but we're saying that we used 70,000 of that.
Yep,
So I'm just rounding it off to make it simplistic, that we have $70,000 that was budgeted for this trail that didn't get used, that is gonna go towards the 165, right? Now, when I hear that the 10,961, we had salary in there because we had staff do some of the work. Okay, that, or not some of the work, a whole bunch of work that we were not anticipating staff doing, but staff did it instead of contracting out.
okay,
And that we're going to have that, we have, staff has discovered that it's cheaper to have the contractors, so we know the exact amount to do that work. But we still have $12,000 in early and late season brush work and invasives. So I'm confused, if we're gonna have contractors, brushing contractors, and that's 62,000, and we only spent 25,000 when we hired them.
okay. Yeah,
I'm really
yeah, I think
confused in
we've
that
got-
part.
I think we-
I understand the question.
Okay,
So through the chair, as I kind of mentioned last year, was a bit of a transition year for us for looking at that stuff. We actually used so what we did use, we used our 2 seasonal employees that are supposed to be spread out throughout the whole regional district. And they were doing a lot of work on the trail itself last year, so that's part of it. We didn't have a brushing contract, so we didn't get to that, which was coming in, right? So what you see there as a brushing contract, that's part of it. So that's not, I think it's $25,000 of that when it's broken.
We got some done.
That was something that we didn't do last year, right? So it didn't get done. So you probably noticed that a lot of the rail trail was grown in or starting to grow in. So we did a couple of test patches. So this year, again, that's what we're doing now. We're planning for that. So we actually are working on the contract currently to make sure that we can get that stuff done. There's early season stuff that we do, and that's not just the flail mowers just really did take down a lot of the new growth. We also have a lot of stuff along the way where trees come down and everything else where we have to then, cut that out. We can't just leave it laying there. So we have to do early burning and all that for a long portion of that trail where we do it. So, whereas the seasonal employee in the past, right, sometimes because we have our seasonal employees for a certain amount of time, which is paid for the whole regional district, on some of those outlying times, where we're using chainsaws and everything else, we will not have a single person going out and working with a chainsaw. That's just health and safety says, no, we should have 2 people there anytime we're using mechanical materials. So that's kind of part of that. Last year, we just didn't get to do some of the things that we are going to do this year. So that's why there's a gap in that. I know what we wanted to do last year. It was a changeover, like I say, from going from someone doing all of this to us. So we learned from last year on what we can and can't do. We learned what we weren't able to do and what we have to contract out. So that's kind of where this year we're going in again with some better planning and understanding with that changeover of contracts to now giving it to someone who's going to go in and brush, say that, or dust control. So last year, we didn't actually need dust control for some of it, right? Some of it we went in and we did little patches, but we actually didn't need it for the whole area because we had such a wet spring. Again, we can't guarantee that that's not going to be a wet spring. It might not be, and then all of a sudden, that's a $10,000 kind of increase or $15,000 increase to dust control the whole area, right? So some of these things are controlled by the weather, some things are controlled by better planning. That's kind of hopefully that answers that.
Through the chair, Director Lockwood just brings up a good point. It's a problem throughout our park services. And I just want to be clear, when I say it's a problem, maybe the better word is challenge, is that not using this to be critical. City of Nelson identified how many hours? 7,800 hours for a park that is 2 kilometers away from the Public Works office. We have, I always forget our numbers. We have 27 regional parks and trails. I think that's the right number. Which the 27 is misleading because at least 4 of those parks have doubled or tripled in size. And we do that and have been doing that with up to 2012 with me. I think that was 2012 when you came into my life.
Trouble.
Yeah, and then just Carrie.
Yep.
So what one of the hopes of having, sorry, and when I say hope, I don't mean it like we're not just hopeful.
Aspirations.
But that that one seasonal person who's been made full-time, that enables more resources at the beginning of the year to get these kind of plannings and pieces in place. Because like literally what has happened is that Carrie gets dragged out into the field at these times of years in the past, instead of doing that contract, arranging contracts. So I do want to say, and this is not just because I'm retiring, but hold Craig and Carrie that we're going to get more work done this year. So when we get to the fall, where I'll still be here to be the front person for it, is hold us accountable to that, because has been a problem that we plan work and don't get it done. And so Diana, you're absolutely correct to be asking us about those things. As Carrie said, we did have a transition from old contract, which we knew was undervalued, and in particular in Nelson Salmo EFG. It was undervalued, and we probably weren't getting the standard of work. Maybe wasn't to where we would like it to have been. And I know that Craig and Carrie, I can tell you because I know in the office the last 2 months in particular have been really trying to lay out those contracts, and I know Jen has been feverishly trying to get those all done. So we plan that this year you should see that, and we should be able to report to you a little bit better about this much trail was treated, for example, for dust control. But as Carrie says, every year we're planning for bigger amounts to get, because some of this is environmentally controlled, which we don't control. So it is good stuff to keep us. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah. Just got the wrong door.
Yeah, no,
Okay, we have about 7 more of these to go, so we're gonna have to pick up the pace.
No, that's okay. Not just you.
Yeah, we'll stop at noon. So let's just pick up the pace. We're covering a lot of like broader topics on that. So work plans, review at the end of the year. We're really going to be focused on operations and completing projects this year.
Can I just
you
make
can retire in peace
for all of them, is when we have broken out costing for each place, and people in all of the areas look at something like this, and I understand, because you never know what's gonna happen, you never know when a tree's gonna come down or whatever, so you don't know, so you have to plan, that we're making sure that the money that we planned on, so this extra 70,000 isn't just getting sucked up in other parks, that it's actually put forward to the place that was planned on in the first place, to make sure that work is continuing on in those, that we're not adding more, is what I'm thinking is that we add more work plan. And this is a problem with the regional district as a whole, and you guys know that as staff, is we keep adding more stuff, that other stuff doesn't get done, or the stuff that gets added.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we get the gist of it, and I think we're seeing pretty good cost containment and compartmentalization. I want to say I'm seeing pretty strong compartmentalization that's keeping those costs where they're assigned. And I really appreciate the operational breakout that we're seeing in this budgetary cycle, so that we can dive into where we're spending that money individually, even though the allocation's happening on the broader service level. I do want to be really sensitive of time, you know, because I wasn't earlier, but now we're kind of coming into the home stretch, so.
You've done great.
We're moving on to McDonald, I believe. McDonald
And
Land.
so if you would like, maybe we could just move along and let you know if you have any questions. That's easier. You want me to explain?
Yeah, go fast.
Yeah, okay. All right, so basically, McDonald's Landing is pretty much the same as it was before. We are working on some more signage. There's all the time, I know Cheryl will probably agree to this, there's, anytime you have a wharf, there's always work to do on it that over and over every year for maintenance aspects of it. So if there's no questions, I can go to Walter Rock, which is basically, it's, you know, minimal work for us. There's some tree removal in the first section. As everyone knows, it's really the first sort of 100 meters, and then the rest of it beyond that is under BC rec sites and trails. So there's, you know, just the basic stuff that we have going on there. I can go to 18, which is Rosebud Lake. So just from confirmation from Mark here, moments ago, the media release went out on Rosebud Lake.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we are, the media release has gone out to about Rosebud Lake that we now are managers of the new lands of Rosebud Lake. So in this Rosebud Lake one, you'll just see there's a list of fees in there. The top one where you see the transfer from Reserve 145, that's part of the $64,000 that was committed to Area G. So that's just work that's going to go down for the dam engineering and consultation. The dam maintenance and signage, there's $50,000 coming over from surplus, or part of last year's surplus was the $50,000 donation that came from the previous landowner. That, as Diana, you're mentioning, is carried over specifically into this part for this reason. So that's that one there. If anybody has been up there lately, we did a lot of work on that in the fall, where we actually cleaned out the spillway, found the sill plate, lowered the level of the lake that was putting pressure on the dam. The dam inspector, the BC provincial dam inspector, has provided us with things that we need to do. We've done a large number of those things already through our staff work, and then we now have to do some of the work which will involve a consultant. But yeah, the lake is actually dropped probably about 20 inches from what it was, which is a real relief for us because it actually reduces that level and pressure on the dam. And so down to the original intention of where that sill plate was in the spillway. So anyway, so if there's not any questions on that, then we can go through Sunshine Bay, which is number 19. So one of the things that just so everyone knows, we do have an employee that works specifically at Sunshine Bay Park. And so can't say how many amazing compliments we get about how nice that park looks all the time. It's one of those good things. We previously in the past had a contractor, and we've gone to a local employee who cares and has done an amazing job with that park. So this does include, so when you see some of this work in here, it does include not only the main park, but it also completes the exhibition, the riding grounds and the wetland area, as well as the dock out on First Street in Proctor. So that's kind of for all three of those parks that are wrapped into one. Page 20, which is Tag Beach. So this is where we get into some of the work that's being done at Tag Beach. And I don't know if you guys want to know anything in there. The one thing in there that we're still working at is those that's kind of carried over from the previous year is First Nations consultation and some of that other work. Page 21, which is Morning Mountain. That's kind of self-explanatory as well. We did a lot of work last year on the base area, highly invasive area with some of that work. So we've been able to remove a fair number of the invasives, and we still have a fair bit of work to do there for that.
Is there a bunch of tansy up there?
Tansy and knapweed and all kinds of that stuff that, yeah, we're slowly, particularly anytime there's that ground disturbance and particularly there because it's so rocky and those things just automatically, you know,
You get like a cutting of a leaf.
yeah, we did some seeding there as well, so we've done some actual planting and things like that to sort of hope that those numbers will continue on. Right now, my understanding is that the rink will be up and running by end of today, hopefully. And then that will be an opportunity for more outdoor skating, which Conway Lake is also, but we don't really manage any of that, but some of that will be really good and the work that goes on there.
I know before I go to you, I know I brought this up to you offline or beforehand, but it would be nice when we're thinking about signage, not to say when the ice is good or bad, but to have that infographic of some sort that's like ice is good when, because we certainly had situations this year.
Yeah. And so
people with knowledge, lack of knowledge out there when they shouldn't be out there.
and through the chair, we have signage up there now.
Okay.
There's actually a QR code on it, which you can look at the QR code and it actually tells you all of the different from the Ice Safety Council.
Yeah, it takes you to the Adventure Smart website, which is the expert.
But there's like, it's not just a QR code, right? Like there's a
So
little.
it just basically tells you like, you know, like
This
wording on signs, just be on caution, ice. And then the QR code is to basically tell you fitness, what it is. So if you're going out there, this is what can handle this. And yeah, this is that website.
Adventure Smart is the same website that does awareness, the avalanche awareness, outdoor awareness.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, and because through the show, the difficulty is that we are not in charge of the lake. We don't manage, it's a provincial asset. So we, at this point, right, we're not telling people that they can go, that we're really saying it's at your own risk and here are the
just
parameters.
have just that reminder. Sorry, Lockwood, you had a question?
Yes, I just want to very quickly ask about the invasive weeds. Is this something that we actually hire CCAS to do or staff doing it themselves?
Good question. So through the chair, one of the things that we did, so we've had CCAS in the past. What CCAS had done is we hired them to go do an inventory for us. They provided us with that inventory. And if you kind of remember, it was a board directive thing through the climate action that directed staff to hire CCAS to do this work.
The mapping work.
To do the removal.
Yeah, okay.
And so what we looked at and said, well, we actually have a person who we hire seasonally who does our reserve gardens, who's worked for CCAS and is well knowledgeable about all these invasives. And so it makes more sense for us, and we talked to CCAS, and you know, we still have a really good relationship, but it makes more sense for us to be dealing with those invasives because it's not a one-time shop. We can send the gang, hey, well, you're dealing with those invasives, we need this, 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 and this done. Yeah. So it's a much more sort of cost-effective way for us to actually manage those invasives in those areas. We've had times where CCAS has actually been someplace and said, hey, we noticed that there was some stuff up on the rail trail that was growing. And we said, great, thanks, fantastic, really appreciate that. We were there the next day and we removed it, as well as a bunch of the other things that we needed to do on that trail anyway, so.
I'll take it offline about some invasives that.
Yeah, so that's kind of where you see, I've started to add those things in here because originally, when we brought it to our commission, I think it was $37,000 that we were paying out to CCAS to do the work. But again, it was like they would go with a whole crew in one day and there's nothing else that could have been done. Now we're looking and saying, how broader can we be more efficient when we go out and do that work? So that's it.
I doubt you have the answer to this, but I'll ask anyway, just in case. Maybe Hans knows. That's the repository of history. Do we keep any kind of track of when the Morning Mountain rink opens? Like, are we opening later and later as things warm up? I would presume so, but do we have any sense? Do you ever keep track of it?
We haven't had it for that long, but
yeah. So through the chair, so 2 years ago it was open early and it stayed open for a long time. Last year was again a bit of an anomaly where we didn't actually open it at all.
Yeah.
This year again it's been ready to go. And
just wait for that weather
until this weather comes. The nice thing about Morning Mountain is it doesn't get sun. right? Because of where it sits.
Yeah.
So even in the day where you might have lions, that you get a hot, warm day that has the sun shining on it, it's still a bit tougher to skate. So that is the one advantage we have at One Mountain. And so, you know, we've had, you know, good success in the past with it in terms of, you know, the timing. The last year is not good, and, you know, it looks like it will be good for the next few weeks here anyway. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, let's go on.
Through the chair, so the last budget on the last page is the overhead budget, so that's just where your total taxation is, but in particular, the point that we've already talked about it, but it's just the increase in the transfer to community services. That's primarily driven by making one of the seasonal employees full-time. To note that both A104 and A109 are still carrying some surplus in them. So if you were to look back into the budget of last year, where I tried to cost those out without surplus, this year was projected to be 294 at that. In the transfer to community services, it's 267, 844. That is that surplus that's carrying forward in those two services. Know that part of that funding in A104 is for the Regional Park Strategy Project, which is still continuing. But we do believe, and you know, as Diana sits around that guidance table, that will be hopefully a transformational document, and it will challenge the board to think differently about regional parks. So that's still to come, and that will be one of the big pieces for this year.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the budget. Well, and the review. I think we got a lot of questions on earlier. I'm not seeing more questions now. Well, Cheryl, go ahead.
Thank you. So through the chair, one of the challenges, like as a new director I've had with these budgets has been these allocation services. Like it's very difficult as a new director or a member of the public to understand sort of where these allocation services end up. And now that you've mentioned that I was not aware that any of A109 was going into parks. So I'm just wondering, my question then to staff is like, how do we, like somebody like me as a new director, get some information or training regarding these allocation services and really more detail on how they work?
Great question.
So the A services, whether it be in resource, I think the primary ones are resource recovery, emergency services, us. Those are the primary ones. They are listed in the financial plan. So it's a great question. So essentially, what the A services are. There's only one director around this table that remember when this sort of came in. It came in from a service review of general administration. And so what became, and over the years, that has changed, Cheryl. I'm probably the only GM that's been through the whole change. So it started off as a service review of general administration, of where general administration fees were had to be transferred out to the services in some measured capacity that used them. Then in about, I don't know, it was 2000, mid 2000 or 2000 was, oh darn it, I just forgot the name of the CEO. Been through so many of them.
Brian?
Pardon?
Brian?
No, before Brian.
Jim,
thank you. Jim Gustafson. Community services used to be funded in general admin. So then we pulled that out and that's what created the community services fee. A109 and A104 have always been linked together.
I'm costed out of A109. So part of mine gets transferred to park services as well. So what the attempt of the A services is to transfer out is to allocate the costs of staff that are not attached to a particular service across the services that they support. And
Is it all staff?
The reason I say staff is because that is what it's based on, but it's not just salaries and benefits. It is the room that the building that they occupy, the paper that they use, the IT that they use, the payroll having to do our payroll, HR having to support our services, all get rolled into that. So it is not, Cheryl, it's not easy to understand. But those A104s and A109, so those budgets are you can see those in the financial plan. Those are the costs that then have to get paid by the services that are supported by them.
Well, the allocation services they're mechanisms to move money between requisitions.
Yeah, so essentially what happens is A104 and A109, like any of the A services are not taxation services. So you'll never see requisitions at the top of an A service. The requisition comes from services like S202, S226, S230, or S225. Those are the services that are actually the requisition services.
So they're the plumbing between the services. And so it's good to see them and we can understand them and how that flows, but in and of themselves, they do not create taxation and they do not.
Well, no, sorry. They do create taxation.
Well, they help you.
They just get the taxation comes from the actual taxation services.
Yeah. Is that helpful or do we need to do more? Go ahead, Cheryl.
So supplemental, if I may, and I do understand the fundamental of why the allocation services exist. What I don't understand and what I struggle to understand is like how these percentages, I don't understand what is in each of these. Like I just learned that Joe's salary comes from out of A109. So, okay, I didn't know that. I thought Joe's salary was coming across on the contributions to the environment or to the park services. Sorry, I don't have the right terminology here. So what my question is to staff, and maybe it should be to Yev, is like, how does a director like me get some more information? Because what I'm struggling with is how these percentages are then allocated and what makes up these allocation services. And this is now my third budget I'm looking at. So this has been my single biggest struggle with the budgets.
And what I would do is at the special budget meeting in February, you will have a breakdown of those percentages of how they get calculated. When we created these services, well, maybe Todd was there too, maybe Dan, but I said these are not intended to be, these are intended to represent something that is somewhat fair. But I'm not going to say that they're accurate year by year because many of the years I don't know what the issue is that's going to pop up that's going to take to distract my time. Because Cheryl, you will see those percentages I hope they're clear, but my expectation is that they'll be a little more difficult to follow than say the logic for some of the stuff in general admin, where you can count the number of invoices that are generated. It really is about, lots of it's about my time, it's about programming time, it's about Mark's time and Carrie's time. So we tend to take, for example, an A104, we do our budget, and then we divide that amongst, we say, this is our total cost. There's 20, well, actually it's 28, I think is what it actually works out to. 28 regional parks, even though one of them doesn't exist, because we charge Creston some of that time. Even though they don't have parks, we're actually spending a lot of time on planning the development of parks in Creston. So I will show you it. I hope it will make it more clear. It may not. It is, I can understand the difficulty.
Interesting. Okay. There will be more to come, it sounds like. We're gonna, we started only in the last couple of years publishing out those allocations because they are that internal machinery. And so as we keep doing that with the public, that's getting, I think even in the last couple of years, we've seen a little bit more. It sounds like we're gonna get even more of a description and the public will have the benefit of that. Lockwood?
Thank you. I just want to go back to having the city of Nelson here. And as I said, while they were here, are we looking at doing any kind of an increase in that? Because I don't see that in this budget. And what I'm anticipating that the reason this is put in front of us is this is how staff is presenting the budget going forward. And if we don't have any changes, that it's going to go in the draft budget for the board. Okay. Correct. So if we do not do anything for an increase in that, we are now, as the city of Nelson said, we are now behind another year, which then all of a sudden next year we look at that. Are we looking at a bigger increase if we're looking at regional, and excuse my hand signals, but regional parks that are municipal owned? So I know that we only have 15 minutes left, but I just want us to maybe touch on, like, is this where the commission wants to sit, or are we looking at 1% more to be able to soften that blow, or maybe kick out Nelson and Salmo and the rest of them, or whatever? Like, I just think that we need to spend some time.
Yeah, through the chair, it's a great question. I didn't know the numbers until you knew the numbers.
Right.
So like I just found out about them today. I arranged the presentation because we had discussion about that. It was, but I didn't know the numbers until I saw them today. It is the one reason why I pointed out that additional contribution that we have right now into reserve. Right now, I projected a 2% increase in taxation and requisition for S202. When we, as the regional district, did our evaluation of what was the influence on inflation, like if inflation impacted everything, what was it? It might have been around 3.3, maybe to 4% for last year. If you were to say to me, Joe, at least include a 3.3% increase to those grants, then I can work the budget backwards to make sure that it stays within that requisition amount, but includes that. So because yes, to Diana's point, the reason for bringing it here was to try and get some political direction at this one, how you want me to proceed for this year. And you've given me direction on the contribution agreement,
which won't get done during the budget period. But if you do want to address the short-term piece, it might be something that's in between. It may not be accurate, but it would be, movement towards that.
Supplemental? I just used or maybe I didn't, I used my own head. The 2%, that's $7,000 for the city of Nelson, it's $80 for Salmo. So it's not like it's gonna break the bank for Salmo, but it might, for the commission, be too much because as we discussed at the last board meeting, is when we put percentages on stuff, ones that are getting paid or getting a large sum of money compared to ones that are not getting, is we make that divide greater instead of, and our chair actually made that analogy. So that's why and I'm not saying to make that different, but that's all I'm saying about using percentages.
Yeah. I agree completely. What I will do, if the commission is okay with this strategy, this enables potentially for you to make a decision in March with more information. I will keep the contribution to reserve at 110. So if we look at page, actually the very last page, the last page of the book, just so you know, so the actual contribution we do from requisition has been 100. As you know, there was a change in the accounting. They're showing the investment income and the potential impact on contributions to reserve. So in this service, they projected that possibly there was going to be $10,000 of investment income and possibly $10,000 to reserve. So what I would do is, I believe that's the same budget they have right now in this budget. So it would take 41,000 from as a budgeted expenditure to contribution to reserve. I would put it into appropriated surplus, so that then that gives us the ability to have that conversation with the city of Nelson and the village of Salmo. And you can then reallocate part of that back to reserve or whatever you feel is best at the point of that decision.
And that keeps us within the 2% requisition increase, which follows our other principles. Oh,
I'm good, thank you.
Graham?
Through the chair, I like that strategy. I just want to point out an observation again, like I'm new here, but I'm noticing like of the requisitions in this service, this $350,000 that this one park is getting, that's, a City of Nelson park, is like over 30% of the entire budget. So that's a lot. So it's just an observation that I'm making as someone new. And I do like the idea that Joe is coming up with, that we could potentially use some of the reserves. Thank you.
And that's just keeping in mind that the majority, how much of the funding comes from residents of the city of Nelson and how that park fits within the ecosystem of parks within the network, being it at a higher level. So, and it's, the amount of use from all over the area. So that's why it's shared in here. That's why that contribution sits like that.
Thank you, Chair. I know, and this is what I was trying to make when the City of Nelson staff was here, is I understand that the lion's share comes out of the City of Nelson, but it doesn't matter what we're doing, the lion's share comes out of, because of assessment, because of population. And so I just want us to be cognitive that we are all benefiting as a regional area. Yep. And that's where that conversation that two people at the commission have not been involved in, and that's how we got to it, is how much of it, and we just arbitrarily looked at a number at the time, and where the City of Nelson was going is that yes, we did that massive amount of hours of discussion to get to where we were. And how do we not go through that massive amount of discussion again? And we continue on the path of looking at these parks regionally and not paying 100% of the park price.
I think versus the munis taking care of their own parks and not contributing to the larger rural network of parks and letting the rural manage its own rural parks. And I think you had mentioned in that conversation earlier, when the numbers were penciled out, the rural parks were further ahead having the munis in contributing than they were if the munis just took the cash that they were contributing and invested fully within their own silo, right? Like that's when it comes down to the taxpayer. Cheryl, your hand is up, so. Nope. Just to keep that balance, we're all trying to make sure we deliver the most park for the most people most of the time.
That was clever. Most of them. So it was a chuckle, it was a key on the side, if you will.
Okay. Do you have any other questions here? We have an approach. Do you need a resolution? Or is that just direction to staff?
I can just take that as.
So we're going to keep some flexibility in here.
Yeah, Lana, if you can just include that as a direction to staff. So in the minutes, Jenna can help you with that after.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. So we'll keep some flexibility for that discussion in the future. That brings us to, I think, our public time. Are there any questions from the public? I don't know if Kevin's staff or not, and we have a guest. Okay. Second call for questions from the public. We just announced a very big park expansion at Rosebud, so stay tuned for the press release. If we don't have any public time, our next meeting is going to be on the 25th at 9 a.m. Same bat place, same bat time. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So
moved and seconded, Lockwood and Newell. Any opposition? Seeing none. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, staff. Thanks, guys. And
yeah, thanks for all the good work.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks for taking all the
Thanks, Tom.
How come I've never seen you?
Press release for Rose.